You have widgets and items
Yes.
in respective services.
Mm-hmm.
How would this work if you had, say, an NG4? So there was multiple widget components or item components.
Okay, so got it. In that case, the collection would stay on the smart component. You would basically, so you'd feed like widgets into the smart component, and then you would just loop over that and feed the individual widget item into that. And so back to smart components and dumb components is figure out where the collection is going and put that into kind of your smart component or the container. And from there, you can do like an NG4 on that collection and then stamp out a bunch of dumb components such as widget items. So I had a widgets list component, but I could take that a step further and do a widget item component and pass in the widget to that via input. Now, let's say that within that component, you need to do something that will actually mutate state. So let's say you wanted to delete a component. And I think I actually have this in here. Let me see. Yes, right here. And so in this case, I want to delete this particular item. Well, what's happening is I don't want to do that from within this individual component. I need to then surface this event to the app component, which then goes into the service and does that. Within the item detail component, and I think I talked about this yesterday. I don't think I covered this today. So let me just really quick talk about this. So in this case, we have a form that has mutable state. Maybe I did talk about this. And so how do you allow a user to make updates to an item? Obviously, that's a mutable operation. Anytime you fill something out in a form that's mutating data, well, how do you do that in the context of Redux and NGRX that everything should be immutable? Well, what you need to do in this case is isolate the mutability. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking the item that's getting sent in. Using object.assign, I'm creating a copy of that, this.selectedItem, which I am then binding to my form. I'm making updates. And if something goes awry and I say cancel, I just throw that object away because I haven't mutated anything on the store. But when I'm ready to click save and I'm ready to go, then what it does is you can see here, wait for it. Oh, it's down here when I click the save button. So in cancel, it just throws it away. For save, then it takes that selected item that I'm mutating locally, and then it passes it up to the store to be inserted into the collection. And so that's how that works. So if you have a form, then create a local copy. You can mutate it, but when you're done, send it back up. But for individual items, just take your collection, parse it out into your dumb components, and then when something happens to mutate it, fire that event back up, and everything flows up till it gets to the reducer. If there's an asynchronous operation, obviously that goes into the service beforehand, and then it goes up to the store from there.
Yeah, I got something to add to that. First of all, I cannot recommend enough watching Dan's tutorial on Redux, because not only does it go over Redux, it kind of goes over architecture of your application when using a Redux pattern. So what I've learned from using React and Redux for a little over a year now is that it's best to only provide the state and the store to your container components. And container components, you can think of the components you navigate to in a router. Those are your container components. Only those components should be subscribed to your store, and everything else should receive its state and its functions from that container component. They shouldn't even subscribe to the store at all. They shouldn't know anything. Those are the dumb components that Lucas was talking about, whereas the container components are the smart components. So that's the way that you pretty much do it with Redux, and it works flawlessly, in my opinion. I've experimented with different approaches, and that's my favorite approach.
Yeah. So very few Spark containers, many dumb components with clearly defined input and output interfaces, or input and outputs to define essentially the API or the interface to your component. Next question.
Is that the Egghead course you're referring to?
Yep.
By Dan?
It was life changing for me, honestly.
And I will just go right to that. So the two things I would say outside of Angular 2, this book here, Reactive Programming with RxJS, is excellent. Very, very easy to understand, great use cases. And then I'm going backwards here. This video course right here, again, it'll be free forever. And this is probably one of the best 2-hour investments you can make in your career is by watching this. Just even to understand how to do immutable operations on collections, like I was just like, oh my gosh, I see the light, like that makes sense. So
you're saying this is free, but the book isn't, right? The book has like
I think it was like $20 or something like
It's
that.
$12 as an ebook.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Again, if you take those concepts, I think programming books are a great investment because, as we know, we are in a very good industry. A $20 investment, if you apply those concepts, then become a $1,000 upon $1,000 investment. I mean, look at me, self-made 100 just balling. Yay books.
On to like provider factory in Angular 2, because we have service. We talk about services a lot. I know it all boils down to a provider in Angular 1, if I'm not mistaken, but that provider pattern of kind of initializing and then having like a get. See what I'm getting at?
So I think that goes away. So in Angular 1, you have essentially factory and service, which was really just convenience methods, even config and value, or constant value, which was just convenience methods over the provider, which allowed you to set some initialization things. And I do not know of a mechanism like that in Angular 2.
That's because they just rely on the getters and setters of the classes now.
Yeah.
You can get it that way.
Yeah.
I think by going to a class-based architecture and the way that things are now injected, that kind of need for that just went away.
I guess if you had like a static property, you can set that
Yes.
before
Yep.
you do it.
Static that, and for instance, like constants and values, you just export that.
Yeah, and it's mainly because Angular 2 doesn't have phases anymore. So there are no run phase, and there's no more phases. So that provider, this doesn't make any sense anymore.
Not needed.
And a lot of that has also been surfaced with, essentially the lifecycle hooks. And so a lot of people needed things like resolve and, kind of these different things. Now, you're doing like scope on destroy and whatever. Like that's, with the lifecycle hooks, you get a lot of that as well. And I think a much more elegant interface to kind of hook into the life cycles of Angular. So I got one thing more to say. Everybody close your eyes. All right. Thank you.